I flew them all to Bora Bora. They reserved a tiny shack for me. "You're fine, it's not like you're special," my aunt said. I thanked her and quietly upgraded myself to a private villa. Their reactions? Priceless. "Wait, you're in the garden unit? But you paid for everything?" my cousin Roxanne asked me, squinting at her cocktail like it was hiding the answer. "Apparently, I'm not special enough for ocean views," I said, not bitter, just honest. She blinked. "Well," I added, leaning back into the cushioned lounge chair of my private deck, "I decided to treat myself after all. I didn't plan this trip to feel smug. I didn't plan it to make a point, or punish anyone, or put myself above my family. I genuinely thought I was doing something generous, even kind. After a decade of distance, awkward holidays, and thinly veiled criticism, I thought maybe, just maybe, a luxury family vacation could soften old resentments and bring us back together. I envisioned laughter over piña coladas, snorkeling adventures, long talks under the stars. I saw it all in my head like a movie I wanted to be real. What actually happened still amazes me. I'm Mira, 42, newly divorced, child-free, and financially very stable, for the first time in my life. I won't go into exact figures, but let's just say selling my stake in a healthcare tech startup gave me options. I kept a modest life on the outside, still drove the same car, didn't flaunt it. But inside, I was finally breathing freely for the first time in years. After my divorce from Julian, who once said, "Your ambition is cute, but it won't ever make you happy," I took some time for myself. Therapy. Solo trips. Reading. I rebuilt who I was outside the lens of wife and quiet overachiever. It was during one of those reflective periods that I began thinking about my family. Most of them still lived in small-town Ohio where I grew up. We hadn't been close since my mom died 8 years ago. She had been the glue that held everyone together. Without her, the calls dried up. The invitations disappeared. There were no falling outs, just drifting. I was tired of drifting. I reached out. It started with a simple group message, short and light. "Hey, I'm thinking about organizing a trip. My treat. No strings. Just family and sunshine." People were hesitant at first. I got a few confused texts. Some radio silence. But then my Aunt Lorna replied, enthusiastic and full of smiley faces. Once she was in, others followed. In total, 12 people confirmed. Aunt Lorna and her husband Arlo. Their daughters, Dina and Roxanne, both in their late 20s, married to Jared and Bryce, respectively. My cousin Nathan and his wife Yuki. My half-brother Milo and his girlfriend Sharon. Plus a cousin once removed whose name I always forgot but included out of fairness. My father didn't come. He and his much younger wife Darlene had other plans. I didn't push. I organized. Flights, accommodations, activities, all of it. I worked with a luxury travel agent and the Intercontinental in Bora Bora to make sure every guest had a memorable, pampered experience. I told them I'd be arriving 2 days early to settle in and relax before everyone else arrived. When I landed, it was heaven. Bora Bora is one of those places that doesn't feel real. The water is clear enough to see your shadow on the sea floor. The air smells like salt and flowers. The quiet is a balm. I stayed in an overwater bungalow those first 2 days, alone, soaking in solitude and peace. Then the group arrived. And things shifted. They didn't greet me with hugs or excitement. There were some awkward waves, a few distracted hellos. Most were too busy taking selfies and commenting on how Instagrammable everything was. I waited near the dock with our coordinator, ready to guide everyone to the private boats I'd arranged to take us directly to the overwater villas. But they weren't interested. "Oh, we've got it handled," Dina said, flippantly. "We talked to someone already." I didn't understand. I followed anyway. That's when I learned they had rearranged the lodging situation. Apparently, a few of them, led by Dina, had contacted the resort before arrival, claimed there had been a mistake, and redistributed the rooms. They said I had accidentally given myself too nice of a space and that since the couples needed more privacy, I could squeeze into the single garden unit. It was inland. No water view. No deck. Just a modest room by the pool storage house. I hadn't even looked at those options when I booked. I confronted Dina gently, confused. She shrugged. "You're here alone." It just made more sense. I turned to Aunt Lorna, hoping she'd correct this, tell me it was a misunderstanding. But she laughed. "You're fine, Mira. It's not like you're special." That sentence rang in my ears like a bell underwater. Distorted, echoing, impossible to ignore. It wasn't the first time she'd said something like that. But it hit different this time. I didn't argue. I just nodded and thanked her. Then I walked away, calmly, and returned to the concierge. That evening, I upgraded. Not just to the bungalow I had originally booked for myself. I went for the presidential overwater villa. A 2-bedroom, palatial spread with glass floors, a private butler, infinity pool, and panoramic views of the ocean. It was breathtaking. And expensive. I didn't care. The rest of them assumed I was staying in the garden unit. They didn't ask. I didn't correct them. Over the next few days, I enjoyed Bora Bora in a way I never had before. Sunrise yoga on my private deck. Fresh seafood breakfasts delivered silently each morning. Lagoon swimming. Spa treatments. Wine under the stars. Meanwhile, the group bickered about dinner times, excursion mix-ups, and snorkeling gear. They took dozens of photos, but the mood soured quickly. I overheard Roxanne arguing with Jared about who used up the villa's hot water. Arlo complained about the lack of American bacon. Nathan disappeared one day because he needed a break from the drama. It took 4 days before anyone noticed I wasn't where they thought I was. I posted one photo, just one, of my view at sunset. Feet up. Champagne glass nearby. By the next morning, Roxanne came knocking on my villa door. She looked stunned. "This is your place?" I nodded. "It is." Her eyes scanned the massive space behind me. "Why didn't you say anything?" I smiled. "No one asked." She didn't know what to say. That afternoon, Aunt Lorna approached me at the resort bar. "You've made everyone uncomfortable," she said, sipping her watered-down drink. I didn't respond. "I just think," she continued, "this isn't what your mother would have wanted." That hurt. But I didn't let her see it. Later that night, I wrote 12 notes. One for each guest. I placed them inside envelopes and had the concierge deliver them with their final room service bill. Each note contained a list of what I had originally booked for them, room descriptions, activities, dining credits. And a short line, "I invited you here as a gift. You chose something else. The cost has been covered by someone who isn't special." I didn't see most of them again. The trip ended 2 days later. They left early. I stayed behind. I stayed the last 2 days alone in that villa. The difference was startling, how quiet it became when they left. Not quiet in the absence of noise sense, but a deeper silence. The kind that only shows up when you finally put down a weight you didn't realize you were carrying. For the first time since they'd arrived, I stopped checking my phone. There were no new texts, no apologies, no awkward explanations. Just digital silence. I wasn't surprised. My family had always had a talent for letting things slide, sweeping tension under the rug until it bulged. I woke up early the next morning and swam in the ocean before breakfast. The sky was pink and gold, the kind of sunrise that feels like a blessing you didn't earn. I thought about my mother a lot that day. What she would have thought of all this. Whether she would have defended me, or told me to let it go. She had been kind, always, sometimes to her own detriment. And she had loved her family fiercely, no matter how much they took her for granted. But I'm not her. And I'm finally okay with that. I went to the spa again that afternoon. There was no rush. No agenda. Just an appointment I'd made under a fake name because, amusingly, I didn't want to be disturbed. Not that anyone was trying. The massage therapist, a woman named Mariva, didn't speak much English. Still, she smiled softly when she saw the tension in my shoulders and said in French accented English, "You are too strong for your own peace." That sentence stayed with me. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had spent too long trying to hold up relationships that no longer fit the shape of who I'd become. Later, when I walked back along the stilted boardwalk to my villa, I passed the empty bungalows my family had stayed in. The cleaning carts were parked outside. Stripped beds, open windows, the sound of vacuuming. Their week was over. And I felt free. But also sad. Not crushed. Not even hurt in the traditional way. Just sad in the quiet, grown-up way. Like you do when you realize something is truly over. That night, I made a choice. I poured a glass of wine, pulled out the travel journal I'd brought with me, and began to write, not just about the trip, but about the years that had led up to it. The comments at family dinners. The way my successes had been downplayed or ignored. The one time I got a promotion and Aunt Lorna asked, "But do you think it'll last?" I wrote about all the subtle slights, all the digs, all the ways I had shrunk myself to keep the peace. And I realized, I hadn't flown them to Bora Bora because I wanted to give them a gift. Not really. I flew them there hoping they'd finally see me. Not as just Mira. Not as the divorced, no kids, overachieving weirdo. But as a person. A whole person. With value and vulnerability and stories they hadn't bothered to ask about. But they didn't. They couldn't. And that wasn't mine to fix. On my final morning, I sat on the edge of my deck, feet dangling over the clear blue water, and finally let myself feel what I had been resisting, grief. For the mother I missed, for the family that never really knew me, and for the younger version of myself who kept hoping they would. That's when I saw it, a message from Nathan. Just a single line, "Hey. Can we talk?" I didn't open it right away. Instead, I went for a walk. The air was thick with sun and the scent of gardenia. I passed tourists giggling on paddleboards and a couple taking photos in matching linen outfits. Life went on. Not everyone's story was heavy. Some were just simple. When I returned, I finally read Nathan's message. He'd sent more. A follow-up. I didn't know what was happening. "I'm sorry. I feel like I missed something important." I wasn't sure how to feel about that. Nathan and I had grown up close. He was my partner in crime as kids. But he'd faded into the background as we got older, took on a quieter role in family gatherings. He rarely contradicted anyone, especially Aunt Lorna. I remembered him laughing awkwardly when she'd made her not special comment. Not mocking me, not supporting her, just staying neutral. Safe. But now, maybe he was waking up. Or maybe he just wanted to clear his conscience. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I packed slowly that day, folding everything with care, taking one last look around the villa. I paused at the door for a moment, trying to memorize the view. It was beautiful, but also, for me, transformational. This trip didn't reunite my family. It revealed it. Back in LA, the silence lingered like fog after a heavy rain. No follow-up messages. No awkward phone calls. Not even a passive-aggressive Facebook post from Aunt Lorna, which was unusual considering her talent for vague booking family drama. Everyone went dark. It was as if the trip had never happened. Except it had. And I was still processing every detail. I returned to my condo in Santa Monica, a modest but tastefully furnished place with a partial ocean view and a kitchen I actually enjoyed using. After years of eating takeout or bland whatever Julian wanted, I'd rediscovered the joy of feeding myself, literally and emotionally. I unpacked slowly. Did laundry. Cleaned out the fridge. Real life stuff. The kind of mundane routine that somehow felt grounding. But inside, I was still unpacking something heavier. There's something disorienting about watching people you've known your whole life behave in ways that shock you, but also don't surprise you at all. That's how I felt replaying every moment from the trip. The way Dina brushed me off like I was an admin instead of the person footing the bill. The dismissive tone Aunt Lorna used, like I had overstepped by treating myself to the same kindness I extended to them. Even little things stuck in my memory, their excited chatter about excursions they didn't invite me on, or the dinners I wasn't told about. I wasn't excluded so much as erased. For the first few days back, I avoided any social interaction. I didn't return Nathan's messages. I didn't tell any friends what had happened. Part of me was embarrassed. Another part didn't know how to explain it without sounding petty. But one evening, as I sat at my dining table eating pasta and sipping a heavy Cabernet, I found myself scrolling back to Nathan's text again. I didn't know what was happening. I'm sorry. I feel like I missed something important. I thought about that word, missed. He had missed something. But so had I. In trying to rebuild something broken, I never stopped to ask if it was worth saving in the first place. Still, I replied. Hey. I appreciate the message. It was a complicated trip for me. Not sure you missed it, but maybe now you're seeing it. I left it at that. I didn't expect much. But to my surprise, Nathan replied quickly. I want to understand. If you're open to it, can I call you? I hesitated. I stared at my phone for a long moment before placing its screen down on the table. Not tonight. The next day, I went into my office, a quiet, cozy shared workspace in Venice where I sometimes worked on freelance consulting gigs. Nothing major, just enough to keep me stimulated and engaged. There, I ran into Tara, a fellow former startup founder turned part-time advisor. She asked how the vacation had been. Without meaning to, I told her everything. The excitement of planning it. The confusion at the airport. The room downgrade. The insult. The upgrade. The reactions. The silence. Tara listened quietly, eyes wide, face neutral. Then she said, "Wow. That sounds like it wasn't a vacation at all, it was a reckoning." I nodded, surprised by the accuracy. We talked a bit more, and for the first time, I said out loud the thing I'd been dancing around in my mind. I thought they'd see me differently if I showed up with kindness. But I think they only ever saw me one way, and they weren't interested in changing that. Tara shrugged gently. Some people get comfortable with their version of you. And when you grow out of it, they act like you're the problem. That line stuck with me all week. Meanwhile, Nathan kept texting. Nothing pushy, just small messages. Thinking about what you said. You were always generous. I guess I didn't realize how alone you must have felt. Let me know if you ever want to grab coffee. It wasn't much. But it was something. And part of me, the tired, raw part, wanted to believe that maybe one person in my family hadn't entirely lost the plot. I finally agreed to meet him. We chose a quiet cafe near the marina, a place with mismatched chairs and good pastries. I arrived early, as usual. Nathan came in a few minutes later, looking sheepish and nervous. He sat across from me, fiddled with the sugar packets for a second, then looked me in the eye. I messed up, he said. I didn't interrupt. Just let him continue. I didn't realize what was going on during the trip. I didn't understand why you were so quiet. I thought you were just doing your own thing. You didn't wonder why I was in a shack while everyone else had a bungalow? I asked, not unkindly. He winced. Honestly? I thought maybe that's what you wanted. I know how independent you are. And I guess I assumed you booked it that way because you didn't want to deal with all the family chaos. That made me pause. Because on some level, I could see how he'd think that. But assumptions, I reminded myself, are often just comfortable ways to avoid paying attention. He went on. When Roxanne showed me your Instagram post, we were all confused. Lorna was pissed. Dina kept saying you were being dramatic. But I couldn't stop thinking, wait, didn't Mira plan this whole thing? Why is she eating dinner alone? I stirred my coffee, watching the cream spiral. I didn't need a parade, I said. Just a little respect. A thank you. Or even just decency. Nathan nodded, visibly ashamed. I get that now. And I'm sorry I didn't say anything then. We talked for almost 2 hours. About growing up. About family dynamics. About how Aunt Lorna had always low-key resented how close I was to my mom. How Dina had always been competitive in subtle, cutting ways. About how easy it had been for everyone to fall into those familiar roles, and how hard it was to challenge them. I didn't forgive him on the spot. But I didn't leave angry either. Something cracked open that day. A small window, maybe. Not enough to let everyone back in. But maybe enough for a little sunlight to reach me. Still, I knew one thing with certainty, I would never, ever organize a trip like that again. A few weeks passed. Nathan and I exchanged messages occasionally. I didn't tell him everything, some wounds are too fresh to poke at, but I appreciated his effort. At least he had the decency to acknowledge what the others wouldn't, that what happened wasn't just inconsiderate. It was calculated. I didn't hear from Dina. Or Roxanne. Or Aunt Lorna. Not even a forwarded meme or one of those thinking of you messages that come after people realize they went too far but can't bring themselves to apologize properly. They stayed quiet. And in their silence, something else came into focus, I didn't miss them. Not really. Still, part of me wanted to close the loop. Not for them, but for me. I didn't want this story to end with a retreat and a sigh. I wanted to reclaim something. Not revenge in the cruel, vindictive sense, but justice. A sense of balance. And I found my opportunity sooner than expected. Every year, our family had a tradition, a summer reunion back in Ohio. Held on my grandfather's old property, now maintained by Aunt Lorna and Arlo, it was usually potluck style, with long tables, sticky humidity, and stories no one wanted to hear twice. I hadn't gone in nearly 7 years. This year, I received the invitation in the mail. A folded cream card printed with gold cursive that read, "Family is forever, annual reunion." Inside was a note, "Hope to see you there, Mira. We'll have a place set for you. Love, Aunt Lorna." I almost laughed. A place set for me. After how they treated me? I was supposed to sit under a mosquito tent, smiling politely while they whispered about how dramatic I'd been in Bora Bora? No. But I didn't throw the invite away either. Instead, I RSVP'd, looking forward to it. I'll bring dessert. Then I made a few calls. The same travel agency I used for the Bora Bora trip also did events and catering. I worked with them to arrange something very special. A fully catered dessert bar, macarons from Paris, handmade tiramisu, gourmet cupcakes from a boutique bakery in Chicago, plus fresh fruit imported from a small organic farm in Oregon. And yes, individual desserts came labeled with cards printed in gold foil. Each one included a short line underneath, "For the guest who knows their worth." But that wasn't the revenge part. The real part came when I arrived. I didn't pull up in a flashy car. I didn't wear anything extravagant. Just a clean white linen dress and sandals. Understated, but polished. I walked onto the property just as Aunt Lorna was telling someone near the buffet line about the cost of grocery store strawberries this season. "Oh Mira," she said, fake surprise painted across her face like foundation. "You made it." I smiled. Of course. I brought dessert. The caterers were setting up as I spoke. Tall white tables, glossy platters, real silver serving tongs. They wore crisp uniforms. A few family members walked over, wide-eyed, and started snapping photos. Dina appeared next. She was holding her toddler, who immediately reached for a cookie. "These are from you?" she asked, squinting like she was checking for a trap. "Yep." She flipped one of the place cards over and read the line. Her face tightened. Roxanne joined her a moment later. Are these catered? From out of state? Multiple states, I replied. I wanted to make sure everyone had something sweet, especially after such a bitter trip earlier this year. They didn't laugh. But others did. A few cousins clapped me on the back. One of Lorna's sisters, rarely vocal, whispered to me while biting into a lavender cheesecake bite, "They'll be talking about this for years." Aunt Lorna finally pulled me aside. "Was this necessary?" she asked, voice low but tense. I met her gaze calmly. "Yes." She sputtered. "After everything we've tried to do, you downgraded my room on a trip I paid for. You laughed when I brought it up. You told me I wasn't special. And I stayed quiet. Now I'm just showing you who I really am." Her mouth opened and closed like a caught fish. But she didn't argue. Not really. The whole reunion shifted after that. People approached me differently. More carefully. More kindly. Suddenly, I wasn't just the black sheep or the family's mystery success. I was the woman who gave them Bora Bora and then gave them a taste of what boundaries look like, in buttercream and gold foil. A week later, I received a group text from Nathan. "You win." Lorna's still ranting about those dessert cards. I told her you were just stating a fact. I smiled, sipped my coffee, and wrote back, "I didn't win. I just stopped playing by their rules." The truth is, revenge doesn't have to be cruel. Sometimes, it's just showing people, gently, firmly, that they don't get to write your story without your permission. And if you can do it with a champagne truffle in hand? Even better.